My voice, my videos, exclusively only on Screen Hoopla. According to this report, it's official. Top Trump official confirms to the American people the existence of a deep state coup to overthrow President Trump of the United States. In yet another example that 2018 has become the year when Orwell's 1984 stopped being fiction, and coming just days after legendary former top FBI official James Kallstrom warned that the FBI was now a criminal fifth column running an illegal conspiracy to topple President Trump. A stunning new report states that just hours ago, Katrina Pearson, President Trump's top advisor for his 2020 re-election campaign, appeared before the American people on Fox News television program The Next Revolution with Steve Hilton, wherein she solemnly confirmed the existence of a plot to overthrow the President of the United States in what she called a silent coup being led by the deep state. According to the report by Katrina Pearson, the deep state refers to the American shadow government that went to war against President Trump upon his being elected, that is led by an equally shadowy cast of characters calling themselves the Resistance, 76 of whom were discovered to be Obama appointees who burrowed themselves into Trump's government, where, for an example, they took over the little-known Washington Headquarters Services, or WHS, that issues security clearances to all U.S. government employees, and who, since taking control, have weaponized this security clearance process to keep nearly all of Trump's appointees from being able to take their jobs. Though President Trump, as of yet, has refused to back down against this shadowy government or deep state of enemies, this report continues that examples of the past U.S. presidents who have made enemies of the deep state show his likely future, and who include President Woodrow Wilson, who was elected to office on a promise to keep the United States out of World War I, but was forced by the deep state to break his promise, after which, according to this report, he was supposedly poisoned, with his wife Edith Wilson becoming the de facto first woman to rule America, but that before his death, President Wilson was able to warn those who followed him by his stating, "Since I entered politics, I have chiefly had men's views confided to me privately. Some of the biggest men in the United States in the field of commerce and manufacturing are afraid of somebody, are afraid of something. They know that there is a powerful somewhere, so organized, so subtle, so watchful, so interlocked, so complete, so pervasive, that they had better not speak above their breath when they speak in condemnation of it," unquote. President FDR, or Franklin Delano Roosevelt, who, like Wilson before him, wanted to keep the United States out of European wars, but who then found himself threatened by a deep state coup that sought to overthrow him in what was called the business plot, but whose cousin, also a U.S. President Theodore Roosevelt, had warned him of what was going to happen by him stating, "Behind the ostensible government sits enthroned an invisible government owning no allegiance and acknowledgement, no responsibilities to the people. To destroy this invisible government, to befold an unholy alliance between corrupt businesses and corrupt politics, is the first task of the statesman of today," unquote. President John F. Kennedy, who took up the challenge of Theodore Roosevelt to destroy this invisible government, and upon his taking office warned the American people about a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy that rules the world, but whom the deep state assassinated in full public view as an example to anyone else thinking of coming against them. President Richard Nixon, who, aside from ending the Vietnam War, struck right at the heart of the deep state's corporate power by creating the Environmental Protection Agency, or EPA, and forcing through the U.S. Congress the Clean Water Act, both designed to hold corporations responsible for poisoning the air and water of America, but whom the full power and might of the deep state then fell upon, ultimately forcing him to resign from office President Ronald Reagan, whom, like President Trump, has vowed to do, took office vowing to the American people that he would destroy the deep state and make the government accountable to the people it's supposed to serve, but who just 2 months after taking office was nearly killed in an assassination attempt made on his life by John Hinckley, who has actually gotten out of prison in the last year, who was the son of one of Vice President George H.W. Bush's closest business partners, with it further to be remembered about Bush that his father, Prescott Bush, helped Hitler rise to power and was involved in a business plot to overthrow President Roosevelt, and George H.W. Bush himself being further implicated in the assassination of President Kennedy. And it goes to figure, ladies and gentlemen, George H.W. Bush Sr. was the vice president for Ronald Reagan at the time. So if Ronald Reagan were to have been actually killed in that assassination attempt, then Bush would have become president at that point. He who has the most to gain is probably the one you should point the finger to. What is most perplexing about this report is that the current deep state coup against President Trump, this report notes, isn't that it's occurring, but that anyone in America is surprised by it, as nearly their entire history is a blood-soaked odyssey of internal power struggles and foreign wars, with all that's left to be determined today being how much of the rest of the world and the United States will it take down with it before it sorts itself out. With different political factions within the United States continually debating if their Constitution is even in effect anymore, since President Roosevelt declared his nation was a national emergency in 1933, and that America still operates under today, this report is detailing that being lost on all of the citizens in the United States is the fact that their entire economy is based on war, and that it is due to the most extraordinary mobilization of an idle economy in the history of the world. That constituted the United States response to World War II, and that saw 17 million new civil jobs created, industrial productivity increased by 96%, and corporate profits doubled. In seeing war break the back of the Great Depression, that no U.S. single politician, political group, or government policy could stop the catastrophe of, this report also states that the most fateful decision the United States ever made was the aftermath of World War II, and was when it decided to make its war economy permanent, but with a downside being, of course, that America needs a war every 4 years in order to sustain its economy growth. Though having tens of millions of American citizens supporting President Trump and though having tens of millions of American people and citizens supporting him, President Trump as a Though having tens of millions of American people and citizens supporting him, President Trump, and as everyone in the world knew would happen, took office with the entire permanent war economy loving the deep state, and decided to his destruction at all costs, with one of his most should-have-known enemies being his own government, and who unleashed upon Trump one of the most insidious attacks ever seen against an American leader, called an investigation, being headed by Special Counsel Robert Mueller, whose mandate wasn't to prosecute any crimes, but to find a crime Trump could be chased after and out of office with. That's known as a witch hunt, because a witch can never prove her innocence. Most interesting to note in the conclusion of this report assessed that President Trump will eventually destroy this deep state coup against him, and is why the Russian defense budget was able to be slashed, while at the same time tens of millions of dollars extra a day continued to flow into Russia thanks to the U.S.-Iranian tensions that have skyrocketed the price of oil to a new 3-year high. And as President Trump continues making America great again with his seemingly never-ending list of accomplishments, his deep state enemies are also unwittingly doing the same thing for Russia every time they launch into fake news hysterics proclaiming the world is about to end. Thank you for watching Screen Hoopla News. I leave you a link below for this article.